This is Behind the Exploratory Lenses, season number 2. Yes, indeed, we are now in the second season of this little podcast of mine where it's mostly become about racing, but it's more than just racing. And with my very first guest to start off season number 2, we discuss about racing, but we also point out the business sides of things. This is not other than two-time Daytona winner in the ARCA Menards Series, Michael Self, who used to be a competitor out west. You might know him as the car with the big green dinosaur that kind of looks like Dynaco, but it's actually Sinclair Oil. You probably remember him being a championship contender. But also, have you wondered what Michael Self does outside of the racing thing when it comes to driving? He's also been a driver coach. He helped out not other than Xfinity Series star Justin Haley back in the day. And now going into 2021, he's going to be a general manager for Silver Hare Racing in the Trans Am TA2 category. Trans Am will be a part of both, not just the NASCAR, but also the IndyCar race weekends, one particular being in Nashville on the street circuit, which hopefully, fingers crossed, with this pandemic is done and over with, I get to be a part of that Nashville weekend. But it was an absolute pleasure to spend 30 minutes phone call interview earlier this morning. As a matter of fact, it was 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time compared to out east. It was 10 a.m. Very early for my time, because it's usually very difficult for me to get up these days very, very early. But I found a way to make it done. As I'm recording this, it's not that long after that interview I had with Michael. So rather than explain where have I been the past couple months, why I took a break, we're just going to jump straight to the interview, because much like the previous season where I had Holly Holland and Gracie Trotter, to name a few, we discussed not just racing, we also discussed other stuff like the inspiration, the motivation, as not just from a competitor, but also as a human being. And also we tossed in some music talk, because why not? Because I like talking about music. Every guest that I've had, we talk about music at some point. So Michael Self was no exception to it. So what I hope you guys enjoy with this interview that you're about to hear is that you learn more about Michael, not just the driver, but also as a business person, because Silver Hare Racing is quite the story, how he got involved in Trans Am, and now he's going to be part of a huge role in Tyler Casera's racing career. You may not have heard of this name, but if you've watched Trans Am next season, or if you're interested because you're obviously intrigued about Michael Self, hopefully you realize the kind of talent he'll be. And most certainly, after doing that interview, that'll be one guy I'll keep an eye on when time permits. Watching Trans Am is not that difficult, as you'll find out at the very end of the interview where we do the social media plugins. Let's jump in straight forward to the interview with Michael Self. We're almost a day removed from that big announcement that you're going from full-time ARCA driver to now general manager of a Trans Am team. Just discuss how excited are you to get that opportunity, and also kind of how that discussion came to be.
Well, I'm very excited, and I'm very flattered. And I think some people might be surprised to hear that when I'm making the transition from, what a lot of people view as the dream job of being driving. But I look at this as a real opportunity to move forward. I'm very proud of what I've done with Sinclair the last couple of years in the ARCA Series, Venturini Motorsports. Have done everything that I wanted to. I've won on every type of track. We've had a little bit of struggles in trying to bring home a championship, but at the end of the day, it was a great run for me, I feel like, and this opportunity came up through the coaching that I've done in the Trans Am TA2 series the last couple of years. Maurice Hull has been a client of mine since 2017, and he has gone and started Silver Hare Racing on his own, something that he always wanted to do in starting a race team, and was looking for some guidance from someone that had a lot of experience managing different items in the racing world, and what I've done with Sinclair, I think gave me a pretty good background and a pretty good foundation to work on. I'll go back a little bit and say that I returned to college in 2016 with a focus on business management because I've always been interested in running a race team. Back when I was with H. Scott Motorsports coaching over there, I looked at Mike Gricci and saw what he was doing and thought I would be interested in doing something like that and being in that position. So Maurice offered this and said, hey, we're willing to work with you. We want to work alongside you, help you learn, help you develop, help you grow, and make this something you can put on your resume. And so the timing was right. Let's face it, 2020 was a hard year for a lot of people. It was especially hard for the oil industry. Sinclair wasn't going to be able to commit to quite as much going forward on the ARCA side of things on racing. And it's as a driver, it's stressful sitting there knowing that what I do, that my income, that my opportunity on track is going to come from whatever sponsorship I generate. And with that kind of up in the air, this is something that offered a little bit more long-term viability and something that was a little bit more financially responsible for myself and my family. And so it seemed like the right time to try something new.
You brought up driving coaching and also your college education back in 2016. In this time, especially you mentioned with pandemic and everything, and also some teams struggling to kind of keep themselves financially afloat, how vital is it to have that education and also a backup plan in the world of racing?
So here's a little bit of a story. When I was in high school, and even probably before high school, I graduated high school in 2009. 2009, 2010, 2011, that's when I was racing the K&N West Series for the first time. And I remember people asking me all the time, what's your backup plan? And I didn't have one. I was a little bit of an arrogant kid at that point because I'd been fortunate from family surroundings to get, to be able to race as much as I wanted to. And my answer was always, I've been pretty successful in racing. I'm going to continue to focus on this. And I think that I don't need a backup plan. And I look back now and I just go, man, that was such a naive thing to say. And when I realized that was in 2014, we didn't have any family money left to go racing. We didn't have any sponsorship, and the time had kind of come for me to move past the K&N Series, and I was kind of sitting there without anything to do. I'd actually started working at the Ford Racing School, which was in Utah at the time at Miller Motorsports Park. But that was all I had as far as a backup plan, just the coaching that I'd done with the school. And so I moved to North Carolina and got the opportunity with Mike Gricci at H. Scott Motorsports to come and work with some of the drivers coming through that program to spot for them and coach for them. And as I did that, I sat there and I said, I don't want to be in this position where I don't have a viable backup or a viable education to rely on. And so I went back to school starting in 2016. I returned to Central Piedmont Community College and started to pursue a degree in business administration and kept coaching at the same time. It's kind of how I kept myself afloat, how I was able to pay my way through school. And then things, they've really, really surprisingly come together. I mean, I think my education, everything that I learned in school helped in building the Sinclair partnership and establishing that and growing it to what it became. And with coaching, I was able to get the opportunity that I have now, but open up a world of a much larger network, a world of relationships. And so I tell a lot of the kids that I work with now, look, whether you think you're the next Jimmy Johnson or the next Christopher Bell, or even if you have the results to prove that you are, having some sort of education is not a bad idea. I mean, it's not going to hurt you in any capacity. I know that it takes a lot of time, and we don't all want to go to college. It's hard. It's a lot of hard work. But I believe that it's paid off tremendously for me, and it's something that I really vouch for.
No, most certainly a backup plan is vital as well, no matter what field it is. And it's quite interesting that you go from that time period where you had a racing career, and also when you went to college, you also had that coaching gig. You mentioned about you already having experience in the Trans Am side. Is you kind of elaborate how that kind of came to be? Is it through the Sinclair folks, or kind of how over time, just something that might interest you to do stuff outside of ARCA and the driving scene?
So Trans Am actually came from a client of mine. I was working in 2015, again, through H. Scott Motorsports. I got the opportunity to work with Justin Haley. Justin was going to be running his first full year of stock cars in the K&N East cars. And I started with him, and actually his uncle bought to me, hey, to work on Justin's road racing abilities, we bought a Trans Am TA2 car. and I'd heard of Trans Am, but I wasn't very familiar with it at the time. I had kind of thought of what Trans Am was back in the 70s, when it was so popular. So we went down and we did I'll never forget, our first test was at Sebring. I think that was early in February. And we went, and I was able to jump in the car that he'd bought, and I was like, man, this thing is very similar to the K&N car. It's the same brake package, it's the same transmission, it's a very similar tire. It's kind of like, this is great. I mean, for getting experience in the NASCAR or ARCA stuff, this is definitely what guys need to be doing and what guys need to be utilizing. So I stuck with Trans Am with Justin. We ran a part-time schedule that year, and I was his driver coach there. And then he ran full-time in 2016 with Mike Cope Racing in the TA2 series. And I stuck with him through all of that. And Justin kind of became a force. He was competing for a championship in 2016 in TA2 as well as the K&N series. And I think people saw that, and so under the Mike Cope banner, I was able to get some additional clients in Keith Prochuk and Matt Parents, and it became a pretty good home for me. It became a spot where I could regularly coach, and I had some full-time reliable clients in the TA2 stuff, and it was something that I really enjoyed doing. I really enjoyed the racing. I really enjoyed the cars. I really enjoyed working with Cope and his team. And it grew from there. So, from that point on, I've worked with the Trans Am Series ever since, going to almost every race. And that's, I was fortunate to meet guys like Maurice, who's now my boss, and to coach him and develop that, and many others. And I fully intend on coaching still in the TA2 series. That's something that I really enjoy.
Well, it's definitely true. Good point. Now, speaking of Justin and also those guys, how neat is it to see like a lot of road racing now being implemented in the NASCAR side of things, even as well as ARCA, more notably next year, where essentially all this touring series will have a huge role with those tracks that are making left and right turns.
Yeah, it goes back to, I think this is the TA2 series and road racing in general is something that's become very, very important for NASCAR with 7 road races on the Cup schedule next year. I only see that number increasing going forward, and it's becoming, look, you've got the Charlotte Roval. That's a playoff race. I mean, 7 of 38 races. What is that? That's almost 20% of your schedule. So you've got to be good. You have to have those road course abilities. And with NASCAR limiting testing and making it so that you really can't go do any in NASCAR or anything, TA2 is the next best option. We run the same car, essentially. We run the same transmissions. We run the same brakes. We run very similar tires to what they run on the Cup and the Xfinity cars. I mean, our cars are a little bit lighter, but as far as a comparison and a practice tool, it would be shocking to me that people don't consider coming and doing some form of either TA2 testing or racing to get seat time and experience for the NASCAR stuff.
Yeah, and that's definitely the case. We see it's a couple drivers from NASCAR run Trans Am, like a Natalie Decker. We've seen a couple Trans Am guys make the occasional road racing starts. It's definitely, I think, for the longest of time, I think people are realizing that this road racing thing is quite very intriguing, because when I started watching racing, it was only very far in between, because people just viewed road racing as just more of an IndyCar open wheel type of thing. But now they just see it as kind of like common ground.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Like I said, it's just, you're just starting to see more of it. And frankly, watching the TA2 races, in my opinion, as someone who's seen the majority of the races the last 5 or 6 years, it's some of the most entertaining racing that I've watched. The races are a good length. They're capped at 70 minutes. They go to some of the best tracks in North America. We go to Sebring. We go to Road America. We go to Road Atlanta. In the past, they've gone to Daytona. They're going to the Charlotte Roval this year. They're going to Mid-Ohio. They go to Watkins Glen. They're going to Canada this year with NASCAR. I mean, it's just some phenomenal, top-end tracks. And the races are really, really genuinely exciting. I mean, it's just great road racing in a short time frame that I think from a fan standpoint is something that's really attractive. So I hope that the series can build with the NASCAR guys that are coming to do it, with the tracks, where they are, and hopefully just continue to grow a solid fan base.
Definitely. The driver that you'll be that'll be a part of the Silver Hare Racing team would be Tyler Kisera. What is the one thing you're looking forward to working with him as far as helping him out in his racing career, especially on the Trans Am level?
So Tyler, I've been blown away at how just intelligent he is and how capable he is on and off the track. Tyler was a relatively unknown name when he came into the TA2 series a couple of years ago, and he's only run a handful of TA2 events, but every single one he's competed for a podium, and he won the race at VIR. And so when a guy like that pops up in his first race, he's competing for a podium in a very, very competitive TA2 field. You're sitting there and you're going, who is this, right? You're like, this guy's running really, really well. Is he some local that's got a ton of laps here or something? But then it translates to the next one. You go, man, this guy's serious, right? And you don't know. I mean, this guy's running a family-run organization. Who knows what kind of budget that he has? Who knows what his skill set is? And I've seen that stuff with Tyler and know that, hey, he is coming from a family-run organization that has a limited budget, and he's coming out and he's winning races. And a guy like that, in my opinion, is capable of coming and winning a lot of races in a really developed program. I think Tyler is going to do really, really well for Silver Hare on track. I'm excited to see him get the opportunity to run full-time and run for a championship because he deserves it. He's a great driver. He's worked his way through the ranks of road racing. And frankly, off the track, he's just a really, really good guy. He has his backup plan. He has his job that he focuses on every week, and he's just tremendously helpful to the team off the track in terms of the feedback that he's able to give, the guidance that he's able to give, and some of our creative and marketing stuff. There's a lot of things that I'm really excited about with Tyler.
For sure, I imagine a lot of people will be looking forward to hearing that, and also keep an eye on him, because you mentioned that you have like a tremendous fan base that kind of stuck with you through thick and thin. How appreciated is that to have a great group of people? Like you mentioned, also not just the fans, but also Sinclair Oil after all these years. Because one of the things I remember vividly is that a couple years ago you were running out west, and if I recall, you were driving for Bob, right? Bob Bruncati?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, having a very different paint scheme because you had the Sinclair sponsorship, so compared to the usual orange and blue cars. So how grateful is to have that kind of fan base of support from not just the fans, but also Sinclair Oil over the past couple years?
Well, it's huge. I mean, let's start with the fan base side of it. Anyone that is willing to support myself as a driver and as a person, it inspires confidence. It's nice to have that kind of support. But then from a sponsor standpoint, as Sinclair, I mean, that's the goal, right? We want to get customers and fans that are committed to the Sinclair brand. They're going to buy merchandise. They're going to fill up at Sinclair gas stations when that opportunity is there. And I think we succeeded in getting a lot of exposure for Sinclair, even at the ARCA and K&N level the last couple of years. And I think a lot of the fan base came because people liked the dinosaur car. Whether they liked me or not, they probably liked the car that had a dinosaur on it. And so working with them as a brand was really exciting and really fun because it took a lot of the work out of it for me. I mean, whether you're a little kid or whether you're older, if you're little, you like the dinosaur car, and if you're older, you may see the Sinclair brand as something a little bit nostalgic and remember the stations from back in the 40s and 50s when they were a national brand. And so being able to gather a fan base for those reasons, and now hoping that they'll kind of follow me over to what I'm doing in TA2 is special because TA2 still it doesn't have a tremendous fan base. It should, and I'm hoping that we're able to build that and bring more to that. But you want people to follow it. I want people to follow TA2 because it's really good, quality, exciting racing. I think it's a very viable product. I want people to follow Silver Hare because I think they're doing a great thing as far as giving guys like Tyler a shot, putting together a first-class program, and hopefully someone they can compete to. So, it's very important if I'm able to bring the fans, be Sinclair fans or fans of Michael Self, over to the TA2 program. That's important. It's invaluable to have that kind of backup.
Most definitely. If I recall correctly, after the finale at Kansas, you mentioned you were involved with Sinclair, but not just in racing, but also kind of on the business side of thing. Want to clarify what other roles you had with Sinclair over the past couple of years? I should say several years as well.
Yeah, so I've been managing the Sinclair sponsorship off track. You know, a big part of our sponsorship has been based around hospitality. We've been bringing a lot of Sinclair customers, being distributors or licensees, to the racetrack, giving them suites, you know, grandstand passes, pit passes, whatever it may be, and doing a lot of hospitality and entertainment. That's something that the sponsorship really was based off of, and I think we got really, really good feedback, and we're pretty successful with that. Also, you know, trying to build different campaigns on the social media side. We did some at store activations, especially when we were out west running the KN West stuff. We were able to do some stuff at Meridian for the race there, bring a car out and do a showing and a giveaway type of thing. Managing all of those sort of things and learning how a sponsor would like to activate in racing and what kind of things made the most sense for them from an activation standpoint really helped me learn that, hey, it's so much more than just TV exposure. It's about getting the customers involved. It's about getting the fans involved and getting, you know, making people happy, making the customers happy, making sure the customers feel like the brand is giving back to them. And learning all that kind of stuff has just it's been a part of that backup plan. It's been a part of that education that I had in terms of how to build a successful partnership, how to grow a successful partnership in racing, and something that, you know, let's face it, racing is driven by dollars. We're all just extremely hungry for sponsorship dollars because that's what gives us the opportunity to be on track. And so the more information I have, the more knowledge I have about creating and building successful partnerships is frankly one of the number one things that we're going to rely on to keep going and stay on track.
Yeah, speaking of Meridian, you won in that venue out west, which I believe was the first one in a couple years. When you look back at your race victories, does the one in Meridian stand out along with your 2 Daytona victories?
It does, and you know, it stands out for a little bit of a different reason. While that was exciting, that was my first win back in a stock car in a couple years. It was the first win I had with Sinclair. Sinclair was on the car that weekend, and we had a big hospitality event at the track. We had a big inflatable dinosaur that kind of sat over the edge of the track. So to get that one with, I think we had close to 80 people there in our hospitality tent, that was a really big deal.
And that is a lot of people, considering Meridian is a very, very small track, pretty much essentially almost a flat little bull ring that's seen some memorable races that hopefully that track somehow gets back on the calendar. But looking at what might be the schedule out west, it may be very small. So we'll see if Meridian ends up making the cut, because it's a very unique circuit. Because I went there back in 2018 to do photography and the journalism side of things. And yes, that dinosaur, I remember seeing it down at Daytona early in the year. Now, speaking of Daytona, just kind of how would you best describe just winning there, not just once but twice in a span of a couple of years? Just how big of a deal is it to win one of the biggest, if not the biggest, race in ARCA?
It's pretty surreal both times. Yeah. I can't say that one time was more special than the other, because that is as special as it gets. There's really no way to describe the feeling of when you take the checkered flag at Daytona, again, not once but twice, and know that you've survived that race, because that race is, it's chaotic. There's a lot that's out of your hands as a driver. There's a lot that's out of your control. There's a lot of B factors that you can get caught up in. You can get caught up in someone else's mistake. You can get caught up in your own mistake, and it makes it so difficult to win. So to do it twice in 3 years was really special. And it's, I think, one part of it is a lot of tracks. Take out the super speedways, but at a lot of these tracks, intermediates, road courses, short tracks, you go through practice, you go through qualifying, and you've got a car that can go win. You know that you can go qualify well. You know that you can go run up front, and so there's an expectation of, okay, look, we've got a car that's capable of winning tonight. At Daytona and Talladega, while you may have a fast car in the back of your head, you know that all those other factors, all those B factors are out there, and your chances of winning aren't any better than the next guy's, because that's just plate racing. That's just how it goes. And so when you are able to win, there's that extra little bit saying, look, whether we had the best car here tonight or not, we overcame everything that comes with these races, and we're able to pull it off. And that's what's really special about it.
Yeah, it's a very extraordinary track, unlike most other circuits. But all of them have their own identities. Out of all the tracks you competed in, which one's just the ones you look forward to running the most, and kind of explain why is that to those wondering what is it like to run at that certain track that you enjoyed most?
Well, anytime there was a road course on the schedule, I was excited about that, simply because of my road racing background, growing up in karting, the amount of road racing coaching and teaching that I've done. So this year on the ARCA schedule, we originally had Mid-Ohio and Watkins Glen planned, which are two really, really great tracks, places that I was really excited about racing at. And then when COVID happened and those tracks both got taken off the schedule, I was heartbroken. I couldn't believe it, because I felt like I'd been waiting for years to run a road course in the ARCA series. And so when Daytona, the road course, got added to the schedule, that became the one that I circled. That was the one that was like, man, that's one I'm really, really, truly looking forward to going to, just because I want to get back on a road course. But outside of that, I always really enjoyed the intermediate track racing. I loved going to Kansas. Kansas was a really fast track, very, very smooth, fun place to race at, a place where you could generally move around quite a bit, especially in the fall race. Michigan was one of my favorite tracks to go to. I'll go out with the track record at Michigan and qualifying at just over 198 miles an hour, 2 years ago, when we had a little bit more horsepower, and it was just a track that was just so fast, so wide. It made it a lot of fun to turn laps at, and so those were the places that I really looked forward to.
Speaking of, so got a couple more questions left. You mentioned on Twitter yesterday that the driving side isn't quite over yet. If that opportunity were to come to arise, you feel like road course will be on top of the list, whether it's in a stock car or in Trans Am?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's going to be some opportunity for me to drive in the TA2 series, which I'm really excited about. I love driving the TA2 cars. They're a ton of fun to drive. They run at some of those best tracks, some of those really great road courses, like I mentioned. But I would certainly love the opportunity to do more NASCAR, especially on the road courses. I'd really love the opportunity to drive a competitive truck or Xfinity car at some of these places like Watkins Glen or Coda or Canada or Indianapolis, Mid-Ohio, even Road America. I will definitely be searching for ways to make that happen. And look, if some oval stuff comes up in the future, I certainly won't turn down the opportunity.
Yeah, and people seem to forget that you have run in the Xfinity Series for Johnny Davis before you went back to college in 2016. Just how much of a learning curve was it at that time period to run on the national touring level a couple times in 2015?
Yeah, it was a very big learning experience. It's when you go run with Johnny's, there's the reality around the program is it's under budget compared to a lot of the cars in the Xfinity field, especially at the time. And so it was a lot of learning. Okay, what are we capable of, and not trying to surpass that. And I made a lot of mistakes trying to do that, trying to get more out of the car than maybe myself or the car was capable of. I caused some damage to Johnny's cars, and that was always kind of the worst feeling, because you know that you're on a budget. The last thing that you want to do is cause any damage or any extra costs. And so it was learning to kind of reel yourself in and take what's there and what's given in that situation. But just learning how competitive it is once you get to that level, that Xfinity level. Just all around, from the financial standpoint to the competition standpoint, it was very, very eye-opening. But again, something I would like to maybe have the chance to dabble in again one day. And all those experiences have led to the knowledge that I have now of how to hopefully run a race team, and manage partnerships and manage budgets, whatever the circumstance may be.
Most certainly, it's all about gaining experience and also reflecting on how far you've come, for sure. If there's one thing you would tell to anyone, I know you brought it up a little bit as well, having that backup plan. What is the one big advice you would tell to an aspiring business person that either wants to get involved in racing or just kind of keep themselves financially afloat, trying different ventures and see what you gain from it?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I think the thing that surprised me the most over the years is working with Sinclair, and it was to keep a very open mind when pitching a sponsor. Don't go in thinking you know what they're looking for, or you know what that company may expect in a sponsorship, because I went in expecting Sinclair to want business-to-business relationships and exposure. And while they did want that, what we really focused on was the hospitality side of it. That's what was really important for them. That's what kept them coming back to racing. And once we got the customers excited about it, they gave Sinclair, the corporation, that positive feedback and made it worthwhile for the corporation to say, look, these guys are getting value out of this. They're excited about it. It keeps them drawn to us as a company. And so we're going to continue with this. I look at that, and that's the biggest thing for me, is not focusing on just one thing or how I think something should be done a certain way. There's plenty of different ways and plenty of different ways that something can happen or can be successful. So, just keep an open mind. Keep an open mind and network as much as you can. Meet people, figure out what those people do, figure out what those people have done, and take all that information and just learn from it.
Most certainly. Even on the media side, it's always important to kind of keep that open mind. It's difficult now with everything's happening, but I think once everything is in the clear, it gets better, where everything seems to get back into normalcy. I imagine a lot of people will get back into the networking side of things person to person, because I feel like as great as people interact through social media, I think it's that person like interaction that kind of stands out a lot more. Don't you think in that mindset, as far as the business side, that it's very important to do it person to person?
If possible, yeah, absolutely. I'm very much, I'm a very open person. I like talking to people, like communicating directly, getting to know someone. I mean, yeah, I would absolutely say so. As much as possible, you're going to gather someone's interest a lot more in person than you may over the phone or over video chat, or especially over an email, right? So make that extra effort. Get out there, be open, be social, be very extroverted when it comes to meeting people and sharing experiences.
All right, just a couple more, very few more and more on the fun side of things. Like when it comes to music, what is kind of like the go-to music as far as playlists is concerned before entering a race, or even just in the business side of things to kind of get you laser focused?
So I would say I did when I was racing. I would generally listen to music when I was getting ready, when I was changing, but it would change every time. There's a lot of songs that are probably on my workout playlist. There's a lot of EDM music on there. There's a lot of rap, older rap from maybe the late 90s or the 2000s. A little bit of rock, maybe some 80s stuff. I really enjoy 80s music. I'm a fan of the throwback stuff. So I'd say any of those three categories.
There's some people out there wondering, there's people out there kind of like scratching their heads, like, you listen to that kind of music and all of that, because the EDM one stands out because I don't think that many people listen to it, because the drivers I interview, when I ask that kind of question, they're usually in the countryside, sometimes rock, but I think you're the first one that I heard EDM come up. Just, how would you just describe EDM music to those other people that are very unfamiliar with it?
Well, I mean, I get why people may not like it, but I always have. I mean, I think back to like when I was younger and dance music would come on. I would get excited about that. I thought that was cool. I liked the way that it sounded. And then through my high school and what would have been my early college years, a lot of my friends were into EDM music. I had a couple friends that dabbled in DJing a little bit, and I just thought I guess I just liked it, right? I mean, I just liked it. It was something a little bit different. I liked the beat of it. It was, very high energy music, which I enjoyed. And look, I guess, everyone has their own opinions and their own taste, right? It was just something that was attractive and enjoyable for me to listen to.
No, certainly there's some EDM music that stands out to me for sure. It seems like it's kind of evolved over time, because considering it's been a couple years since I graduated from college, and EDM was kind of all the rage, even in the state of Idaho, where it's more like It's like, wow, even in Idaho, EDM is a big deal. But
Sure, yeah.
yeah, that's besides the point. Now, just kind of like the final just takeaways. Kind of like, where would be the ideal way for people to find you, and also kind of like follow your Trans Am career as far as the general manager, maybe fingers crossed on your perspective, the driving side.
Yeah, I think the easiest stuff for now is still going to be on social media. You know, you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Michael Sell and Silver Hare. We're rebranding all the social media accounts over there and trying to get them really active, especially going forward to the 2021 season. On Twitter, they're Team Silver Hare, and they're on Instagram and Facebook as well. And the Trans Am Series, they do a really great job they actually do a live stream of almost every race. So if you have the Trans Am app, they do live video stream of every race with great broadcasting. I'm trying to think, at Road Atlanta, Ryan Eversley, the IMSA driver, he was one of the broadcasters for it, which made it really exciting. He did a great job at it. So I encourage people to check it out. Check it out on your phone. It's free. Download the Trans Am app. Tune into the races. We'll try and do the best job we can at keeping people informed on social media, interacting with people, and trying to get people when possible and when safe to come out to the races. And hopefully we'll see some folks at the road courses, and you'll be able to share what the Trans Am Series really is.
No, absolutely. I imagine that people will feel the same way. There's a couple that I imagine are going to be kind of like part of the NASCAR weekend, and then also some Indy cars, because I think Nashville is also going to be part of that calendar, the new Nashville Street Circuit. So I'll definitely keep an eye on it, and also not just to like watch, but also in person, since I'm planning to, hopefully, fingers crossed, things get better, to be around Nashville to see the Trans Am cars on the street course. Would be unique photos. Side project would be. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be a super cool weekend. One that I'm really looking forward to. Having the Trans Am cars on that track with the IndyCar weekend. Really, definitely have that one circle on the calendar. I think that's going to be a lot of hype around that one.
Most definitely, that is for sure. So yeah, it was definitely an absolute pleasure to call for 30 minutes to just discuss about not just the driving, but also just Trans Am, to kind of get people excited about it, and also just intrigued, because I know, like, being a writer and photographer is neat to kind of know both the main side of things, kind of like this new project, but also just kind of expand on it just so people could get interested, especially those who will be listening to this.
Yeah, I hope so. Like I said, I'm going to really try and step up my social media game to try and be inclusive and try and get people involved in what we're doing, maybe behind the scenes a little bit in the Trans Am stuff, and try and drive some more focus and some more engagement over there. So, everyone, I really appreciate the time today, and appreciate you taking as much time as you have to ask questions and learn about this. And I hope everyone that hears it will follow and give us a shot over at Silver Hare and the TA2 series, and just come see what the series is all about next year. I think they'll really enjoy it.
Yeah, most definitely, Michael. It's definitely an absolute pleasure, and I really appreciate taking the time to just discuss about this thing once again. So hopefully you have a good day, and hopefully that interview in, I think, less than 10 minutes bodes well for you as well.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You as well, and thanks again for the time.
And there you have it. That was my interview with Michael Self, not just a two-time ARCA Daytona winner, but also a multi-time West winner. And the only time we've seen a Bob Bruncardi car that wasn't orange and blue, or that had Sunrise Forest, the primary sponsor. I remember that back in 2017 at Evergreens, I was inclined to ask. But yeah, EDM. That is definitely the first time I've heard someone mention EDM as part of the routine. It's always very intrigued to hear different genres, and I'm always interested. Sometimes some genres I'm not crazy about, but I'm open to some of them. Then again, my music is all over the place. I'm the guy that listens to not just Metallica, but also the Aces, as well as many, many other artists, few far between. Like, back a couple weeks ago, somebody had Beach Bunny as their number one most listened artist, and I said, oh, that's the second person I've ever met in my life, or know of, that listens to Beach Bunny. So I have this one dear friend of mine, I'm trying to get on a podcast someday. Voice crack. But anyways, that's a different talk for another time. Season 2 of Behind the Exploratory Lenses will be a little bit different To start off, it's going to be sporadic. It's like when I have a guest, you'll hear from it. It's not going to be every Wednesday going forward at the moment of time. Maybe once racing season kicks in, maybe once the motivation comes back to invite other guests in this program, we'll make it more of a routine thing yet again. But for now, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Hopefully you give the other episodes that I've done in Season 1 a listen. Like I said, I had Holly Holland on. I had Gracie Trotter in the Season 1 finale. I also have a couple of my buddies. I also a couple of YouTubers like Frisky Dixon and Balto Racing. Like some of the friends like author TJ Trengel, Brandon Crossland, who's just recently did the Snowball Derby coverage. And of course, Emerson Arden, who's running a iRacing league. Yes, iRacing. That's something I cannot have because I have a low budget. But that's for a different topic for another day. Anyways, give that a listen, and also just give my outlets, my media outlets, Motorsports Tribune and the Podium Finish a follow on social media. Just type it in. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you name it, you'll find us. It's also on my Twitter, at the LT Files. Instagram is Luis D. Torres 94, LUIS, DS and David, TORRES 94. And for those listening on YouTube, that's a little bit of a sneak peek, and one of the main reasons why I haven't done much YouTube's content, because I try to make this podcast a thing. Hopefully, you guys view this special treat as kind of like, oh, so that's what he's been up to these days, rather than doing red flags and TV graphics. For those who are wondering what about my YouTube career, next time. In the meantime, until we meet again, hopefully you enjoyed the holiday season. Have a wonderful holiday. Stay safe. Be mindful. Use your head. But more importantly, be open of exploring different things.